Hello everyone. So today I'll bring to you a very different sort of video. So this is neither a tech review, this is neither a travelogue, and this is neither a cooking video. Let me try to make it a very interesting video. And it will be a long one. So for that part you can rest assured. The only thing to note here is I will try to engage you in some very unique thoughts that I hope will help us become like better human beings maybe. So right now there are a lot of conflicts that are going on around in the world, right? Whatever is happening between Russia and Ukraine, then you have the Middle East, then you have Taiwan, then you have the minor ones like Greenland, Canada, and your Panama also coming up into the limelight from time to time. So I'll look at all these conflicts from an all-encompassing virtual theory, right, that I have come across. So this is the theory of cosmic civilization. And with the theory of cosmic civilization and cosmic sociology, I'll try to fit the relevant conflicts. A couple of conflicts maybe I'll pick up and also try to imbibe the same concept in our day-to-day lives. So what is this theory of cosmic civilization? To know about cosmic civilization, first let's understand a very fundamental theory in astrophysics called the Fermi paradox. So we have an overwhelming probability of extraterrestrial intelligent life forms that we should have encountered till now. I mean, given the number of stars out there in the universe, we should have already encountered some extraterrestrial being or civilization by now, but we haven't seen anything yet, right? So this is the Fermi paradox. Why is it that we have never come across any other intelligent life form? Now, Fermi paradox has multiple explanations. There are multiple postulates or explanations which various physicists as well as scientists from time to time have come up across with. Maybe they are too far away, just too far away. Maybe they're the timelines that we live in and their civilization is not matching us. Maybe they are so much technically superior than us that it doesn't, I mean, we are not able to detect them at all, right? Or maybe they don't exist at all. There have been many different explanations of the Fermi paradox. The most chilling one amongst which is the dark forest hypothesis. Right? Dark forest is something that has been covered very extensively by the Chinese author Cixin Liu in his Remembrance of the Earth's Past trilogy. I have already created dedicated video on each of the books that you can cover from my channel. Again, for any of the sci-fi fans out there, this is a must read. I'm sure you would have not read anything that would even come close to the kind of width and depth that these books lead us into. There's a Netflix series also, by the way, which covers only the first book, but the real masala starts from the second book onwards, right? So Arthur C. Clarke, who was one of the biggest sci-fi writers ever to live in the world, had a very plain view of the Fermi paradox. So there can be only two options to the Fermi paradox. Probably we are the only one out there in the world, in the entire universe, or probably there are many other civilizations that exists like us that we are yet to find out. Now both the two options are equally terrifying. That's the funny part about it. Right? Now let's pick the first option where we are the only civilization to exist. Now that does mean that we get all the resources of the entire universe in front of us to use, but that also leaves us with this stinging reminder that we are an anomaly. There might have been millions and millions of other civilizations that has existed that do not exist right now, And it also means that the universe is inherently inhospitable, and inhospitable for us also. So it's just a matter of time that the already written fate of this civilization will also be met. Right? So this is if we are the only one that exists in the universe. Now let's consider the other scenario where there are like numerous civilizations that exist. We are just yet to discover them. Right? Now to understand this scenario in a better way, let's try to give examples of how the civilizations in Earth actually evolved and started. Suppose that we'll extend this understanding to the cosmic level. So, humans have always been exploratory in nature, be it in the colonial times or be it right now while we're searching for extraterrestrial life through our telescopes. So, in this example, we are taking the British Empire. So, they knew because of all the evidence that right next to English Channel there is the European heartland. So that part is already populated. So the next step was to find new territories where they can get more resources. The Britain by default was a very small place, right? So they had to find resources. So they started this blind explorations and they reached America, right? And started colonizing it. Now the colonizing of new territories, be it anywhere in the world, it is not a very simple process. A lot of violence was involved, lot of wars were fought, and that's how new territories were discovered, right? The United States were discovered, North America was discovered, they discovered India, they discovered Africa, other countries across all across the world, right? Slowly and slowly the entire map of the world began to take shape. So this only happened because humans started exploring. Now when these new territories started to come into the picture, everything was not entirely peaceful. A lot of wars had to be fought, like a lot of aboriginal communities, native communities in the new lands had to be completely obliterated by the European hordes, right? At the same time, there would have been many places where these explorers had also gotten killed or assassinated when they tried to capture something or when they even tried to offer their hands in friendship. So all these things were happening. But as the time progressed and as the special difference distance between these Europeans for this very recent past, we can take example of all the prehistoric civilization. I mean, even the Indus Valley civilization, the Chinese one and the Mesopotamian one, they were also in touch, right? But over time, I'm picking up this recent example because this will help us connect better with how things have evolved. Right, with the passage of time, more and more communities, more and more civilization, by civilization I would mainly mean the kingdoms or the communities or the cultures, the mingling of cultures that started to take place. Right, there were wars, there were friendships, but the overall thing that was happening was the distance between two different unique civilizations started to decrease. Right, faster modes of communication and transport were also getting discovered. At the same time, better communication channels, and over the period of years, right, a sense of understanding also started to crop up. So the wars to a large extent have been taken down because of a number of cross civilizational agencies that have come into picture, right? The United Nations is the one that's doing some of the unifying tasks right now, but even after that there are wars. Even if you look right now, there are two active wars that are right in the focus of the international community. And apart from that, there are regional rebel wars all across, be it Afghanistan, Pakistan, parts of India, parts of Africa. I mean, most of these cases hardly come into the limelight. So even after the presence of these intergovernmental agencies, even if the distance between, let's say, two countries, a phone, there is literally no communication gap at all. I can just right away call up anywhere from here to the US and understand what their version of let's say whatever is happening, whatever the conflict is right away. But despite that, there are conflicts. Now, just extend it to the entire universe where we are yet to come across any other advanced civilization. Just think about what kind of cross planetary or cross galactic federation can help mitigate any such conflict. So, this is literally not possible. So, that's the gist of dark forest theory. It means that a developed enough civilization would have realized by now that in order to survive in the future, in order to have a long-term chance at survival, the only way out is the complete eradication of the competitor. So that's the fundamental fact that the dark forest theory teaches, which inherently means that the best chances of survival is when a civilization, a planet that has life in it, would try to remain as discreet as possible. They are like the hunter who will keep on moving through the vast expanse of the universe silently. I mean, they need to hide from predators all the time, and if they themselves find some other civilization, right, in their exploration across, in their silent exploration, the only thing that they have in their right to do is to destroy this new civilization. So that's the gist of the dark forest theory. Now, dark forest theory is running something in parallel, but at the same time, when we talk about these different civilizations, right, there are some guarding principles that Cixin Liu has discussed in his books. The primary one of them being the study of cosmic civilization. So, cosmic civilization is the study of relationships between the different intergalactic civilizations that can exist. The same can be extrapolated to our day-to-day lives also. I'll try to quote some examples just to simplify this thing. So there are two core axioms of cosmic civilization. The first being survival is at the core of each and every civilization. The urge of someone to survive, it supersedes all other urges. So civilization will do anything and everything to survive, right? And the second being, all the civilization will grow and expand, right? And the resources in the universe is limited. Even if we look at the expanse of the universe, most of it is completely vacant, right? So matter and resources are limited. So even if it might seem abundant right now, a few hundred years or 1,000 years at a cosmic level, 1,000 years is also less than a peanut, right? So over that expense, for a long time survival, resources will be a constraint. So all the civilization will always want to preserve and maximize their handholding of the resources. So all in all, just to survive, a civilization has to grow. And just to grow, they also have to get more resources. And to get more resources, they have to explore. And when they explore, they will find new civilization. And this is where cosmic sociology and cosmic civilization comes into picture. What kind of interactions will be held between these civilizations is something that is guarded by the tenets of or the axioms of cosmic sociology. Same thing can also be implied on current day nations, right? Now, what kind of interaction can come in between these different civilizations, and what actually made Cixin Liu claim that as per dark forest hypothesis, total annihilation of anything and everything that can be found in the universe and total hiding nature of any well-aware and developed civilization is the key to survival. This he has explained through two assumptions of, again, cosmic civilization. The first is chain of suspicion, and the second one is technological explosion. I'll just get into the first one, right, which is chain of suspicion. So, what is chain of suspicion? because of these millions and millions of light years, that the distance that might be present between us and the second civilization that we have become aware of. Because of this distance, the way they perceive the world or whatever is going on inside their minds is not something that I can get to know. I mean, I have a physical barrier, right? I don't have any source of communicating to them. I don't have cell phones that I can just pick up and talk to them, right? In the earth, we have cell phones, we have internet, we can do VCs, we have flights that can reach any corner of the world. Physically, we can be present. And even after that, such a big war is happening right now between two neighbors, right? And how can we expect that a far, far away civilization, which again follows the two axioms of life, right? Survival and growth and limited resource, right? With that civilization also being aware of this fact, and we also being aware of this fact, just imagine the level of doubt that we will have towards that civilization or that civilization would have towards us. Communication always helps bring down these confusion, right? But there is no communication that exists as of now. So in such a case, Cixin Liu has tried to make the picture very clear in front of us how things will work. Let's say I am a civilization A and you are the other civilization, and both of us have become aware of each other's existence. But there is no other modes of communication by which we can express or know about each other's mindset, right? And we have to take quick decision because this is a cosmic scale event, right? There are no second chances. So the chain of suspicion help us lay out the decision pointers to take in such a scenario. Now the question in front of me as a civilization is, do we attack, right? Because it's a case of survival of the entire planet. So now you can either be malevolent or benevolent. Malevolent means you are completely bad for me and I have to obliterate you. In that case, I will just straight away go ahead and be done with it. Right. But the other option is maybe you are benevolent. So I will think and I'll take time. But the moment I take time, I might assume that you are benevolent, but you at your end, you are also completely guided by the cosmic sociology principles, right? So you might not assume that I am benevolent. You might think that I am malevolent, and you make the first strike to me and obliterate me. So anyway, I would have been much better off if I would have taken the first step, right? So this chain of suspicion is something that is a non-ending process. The more time you take, right, the more information you try to gather, you are just increasing the risk of the other side obliterating you before you take the first stand. So whatever the type of civilization you are, whatever I have encountered, it's always a much safer bet to go ahead with destruction instead of waiting up and taking the risk. So that's what chains of suspicion tells us. Because even if you assume that the other side is benevolent, you cannot be sure that they are really benevolent, what's going on inside their mind, right? Even if they tell you that they are benevolent, then also you can never be sure. The universal axioms of the dark forest theory still apply to all. So, under any scenario, the probability of you inflicting the first strike will always be better for you. So all these permutations and combination, if I were to do, right, the very fact that I cannot communicate with you, and because of the cultural differences, the various differences that would have been present inherently because we didn't evolve together, it would be very hard for me to decide whether you are benevolent or you are malevolent. Similarly, the same would also apply to you. And even if in the worst scenario I consider that you are benevolent, right, we have a very good relationship, these two civilizations, right? But then there would be third civilization also out there in the universe, right? And again the same chain of suspicion would be applicable between that civilization and both of us. And if they were to detect that something exists, they might be in a much more evolved state where they would have already done the permutations, all kind of experiments they would have done, and they would have realized that there is nothing called friendly relations, and the only thing that's possible for in their hands to do to preserve the survival is a straightaway obliteration. So in this scenario, they might find this other civilization first, and because they have found that civilization through their in-depth investigation, they would also be able to detect my presence, and my civilization is also doomed. So whatever the scenario is, the only reasonable outcome basis which I as a civilization will take a call is to obliterate you. There are further risks attached to me deciding not to invade you, which is again covered by the second assumption, which is technological explosion. Now, let's say I find you to be a very docile civilization. You are at a prehistoric level of development, while I have already reached the stars, right? So that's the state as it exists now. You are situated, let's say, 1,000 light years away from me, right? And even if I, let's say, developed hibernation and all sorts of technologies, right, then also I will need at least 1,000 years. That's the most upper limit that anything can travel as understood by the current state of physics, right? So even if I were to reach you in like 1,000 years, or let's say I reach you in 100 or 200 years, right, by the time I physically reach there, there might simply be a technological revolution that has happened to your civilization, and by the time I reach there, I already see that there are lots of these nuclear weapons and a planetary defense system active, and that obliterates me when I try to physically go to your planet, right? So the way technology has evolved on Earth itself is the biggest sign of technological explosion. Humans have existed in the world for like tens of thousands of years, right? But it has only been in the last couple of centuries when humans have actually evolved from, let's say, a hunter gatherer to agriculturist through the industrial revolution to its current state. So it's only the very recent past of a couple of 100 years, to be precise, even less than 50 years, that has led us to the current state of being we are in. So I think that should be a clearer reflection of how strong technological explosion can be. And in the cosmic level of events and time scale, a few 100 years means nothing at all. Let's say civilization had discovered us like 1,000 years back, and they took like 2,000 years to reach us, right? They would have prepared their defensive mechanism basis whatever the understanding were of us at that point of time. We used to use these shovels, pickaxes, right, bows and arrows during those times, cannons at max. Right? If they made the readiness basis this level of readiness from you, then then I would be literally doomed by the time I reach your planet, right? So technological explosion is something that can happen, and the time frame at a cosmic level is like peanuts. So that's why even if I am much more superior to you at this point of time, I cannot just simply take the risk of awaiting for things to move very slowly and amicably. I just cannot take that risk. However, evolved and super civilizations are not so docile and not so stupid, right? They are always in the working to safeguard the survival. So there are some weapons that we also come into the picture in dark forest theory, which various civilizations have used from time to time. For example, using the first mode of communication, the very rudimentary one, that radio signals through which the Trisolarans wanted to influence the way Earth thinks, like, right, through various revolutions, through environmental issues and all, just to block the progress of Earth. So all this has started already when the Trisolaran invaded physically had started from that planet. Right? After trying to influence through human means, the Trisolaran technology developed further, and then they sent the quantum entangled proton called Sophon, which again stopped the technological development of Earth. The level of these weapons are just mind blowing. I mean, how can even someone think of these kind of things, right? Then they sent the mass dot, right, which is again something that will penetrate the planet and destroy it in no time, something that the Earth would never have even dreamt of. We also got to see the super strong singer Civilization, which uses a dual vector foil to destroy Earth. I mean, they thought so much about in it, right? So the singer who was the character who was covered up in the book, he explored all the pros and cons of using different time modes of destruction, right? He also explored how a mass dot, if it used in such a scenario, would leave the low entropy beings. That's what they referred to the poorly organisms of Earth. So that might leave some residue behind. So they didn't use the mass drop. Whereas on the other hand, humans had tried to protect themselves, considering the mass dot of the Trisolarans to be the ultimate weapon. Such was their fate. So at the end, Singer was actually noticing all the interaction between Earth and Trisolaran from way up in the food chain, right? So he could see how the humans tried to build their shelter. I mean, trying to shelter around the gas giants like Jupiter, right? So instead of a mass dot, he sent the dual vector foil, against which humans literally didn't have any survival strategy, and the human Earth basically came to an end with a dual vector foil. We also get to see various dimensional weapons, right? Dual vector foil was one. We also get to see things like the black domain, which was again a developed strategy used by humans and other evolved civilizations in the future to safeguard themselves. Right. So all these weapons and everything would come into the picture just to ensure that the the survival of its developer is assured. Anyway, we'll just go back to the storyline. A lot of deviation. So that is how terrifying the hypothesis is. And you can just apply parts of it to the various scenarios that you are observing in the world right now. Just think about Russia and Ukraine right now. I mean, compared to the kind of strength that Russia currently has, Ukraine stands nowhere, right? So they just cannot take the risk of this country, which is sitting right next door, to take any such steps, especially when they have been quite vocal about their anti Russian sentiments and their inclination to join NATO, and Eastern countries are by default enemies of Russia. And when they see their own brothers, right, Ukraine, the word itself in Russian means outskirts. The people speak literally the same language. There are more differences between, let's say, the Russian that's spoken in St. Petersburg versus that's spoken in Vladivostok. I mean, there will be more differences between these two dialects rather than between Russian and Ukrainian. Some are very similar to Hindi and Urdu, right? The similarities of Hindi and Urdu, they are incomparable, let's say, to the similarities between Hindi and, let's say, Bhojpuri or any of the other dialects, regional dialects of Hindi. But still, Hindi and Urdu are two different languages. When there is such a proximity of two civilizations which have maybe existed sometime back in the past, then because of resource can be human resources, followers of a particular religion, right, followers of a particular sect, anything at all. I mean, if a time comes when a sect becomes more inclined towards one philosophy or anything, right, then they would try to obliterate the other one. And if the two sections are, even if the two sections are far, far apart in terms of superiority or strength, then also over time, the weaker one can definitely surpass the other one if given due time and if they are, let's say, given support by external factors. So that risk just cannot be taken. So technological explosion is what deals the final nail in the coffin for the dark forest theory, right? So whichever way you try to look at it, the only outcome because of the dark forest nature of the universe is destruction. So that again goes on to explain the Fermi paradox on why, despite the high probability of other civilization existing, we have not encountered anything till now. So all this civilization, they exist as hunters hunting in the dark. Hunters, when they hunt in the dark, they want to be as discreet as possible. They don't want to draw any attention, or a bigger predator might come and the hunter might become the hunted. And also, the hunter, when he notices a prey, the fact that the prey got noticed is an ultimate indicator of its stupidity or of its lowliness. That's why it got detected. So the hunter will have to take its action. So that's how gloomy the concept of dark forest is. That's how gloomy the study of cosmic civilization is. And that's how gloomy the fate of the entire universe is. If you are to believe in this theory. And if you are to believe in this theory, that also means that any sort of communication, exploration, any sort of sending messages through SETI, right? Even if you hear something that's coming out from the wide expanse of the universe, can be good enough to reveal the location of Earth. So that is what sends shivers down anyone's, I mean, at least on my nerves when I just think about the expanse of this theory. So that's all what I had for today. Tits and bits of these. This is a dark forest philosophy, right? So this can be applied to our day-to-day lives, to whatever is happening out there in the world. Just consider a couple for an instance, right? I mean, even though they are specially not separated, right? They are like living next to each other. Even after that, whatever goes in mind of one spouse and whatever goes in mind of the other spouse, they cannot have a clue. They can only have some bits and bits of information, but they don't have a clue of what's actually going. And even if the other person comes out and tells the other person what has been going in his or her mind, the other spouse might not just believe it. So there will always be an iota of disbelief attached to it. So the chain of suspicion is something that acts at the very fundamental level. And it's the impact and the distrust only increases as the communication and distance between these two individual or these two nation increases. The examples, if you try to extrapolate, are so hilarious. Just think about how the United States was formed, right? So these were primarily the British colonials who started exploring for other lands. They found the North American subcontinent, right? They started living there. A lot of native folks also came into fight. Most of the time they were obliterated. In some places the British took it over, right? But just 100 years down the line, these very settlers who were like the harbingers of the British Empire, they themselves started their revolt against the British Empire, and they had their own strife for independence. They fought against their own ancestors, right? So what caused this thing? Again, chain of suspicion. Because they had crossed the Atlantic, they are living on the other part of the world, right? So there, and again, the resource is also constrained, right? So as they reached this other part of the world, this new part of the world became their home. New part of the world had to establish its dominance, right, to be able to survive. The new part of the world had to become the United States of America. Apply it to any other country. Whenever a distance separation is created, you will see separational tendencies also would start cropping up. So there is nothing to be excited about it, to be offended by it. People talk about mixing of cultures, right? Mixing of cultures, all the different cultures should a heterogeneous society, right? The metro society should be like that. But the moment you go into metro society, the very fabric of existence that you are right now in will break. So it's again a very vicious cycle. A few of the European countries, right, which again welcomed migrants with whole hearts, right? And then slowly and slowly, these migrants again they would bring in their own culture, their own thought processes, their own values, right? So these values again to accommodate these countries would again have to adapt. So they are again becoming less and less homogeneous and more accommodative, right? They are becoming less homogeneous or more accommodative, but again the population that had immigrated to this country, right, they also want to create their own identity in this new space. They have to survive, right? They have to keep their identity alive. So the kind of awareness, the kind of dedication that a homologous society has towards, let's say, the national construct in which it lives will always be far stronger than the national inclination for a heterologous society. Because all these different folks who are belonging to different cultures, civilizations, right, they can never have common values, they can never have common heroes, they can never have common history. So there would always be this separational tendency that will be present. And with the passage of time, with the development of technology and all, there is always the possibility of a time coming when a violent conflict will start. So this is the inevitable truth. Now, with the inevitable truth being so gloomy, what remains for humans to pursue, or any nation to pursue, or any community to pursue? The only thing that can be done is to delay the ever impending destruction, to delay it as long as possible. And how can the delays be inserted? Through communication, through mixing, through heterogeneity, right? So, although some of the things will go against the construct of the current state of being, but to delay the destruction to the max level possible, one has to take steps of improving communication, improving relation, and improving on compromises. So that's the way to go about. So the call always has to be taken while one is in power. Otherwise, I mean, if they're okay to give away the power, they can be accommodative, right? But if they want to ascertain the sustenance of something that they have to enforce their power. So that's basically the dark nature of cosmic civilization. I hope I have been able to make some clear points, because the theory itself is so convoluted, and the way I speak, I don't know if I am able to. I have always considered myself to a very weak explainer. I explain things in a very convoluted way, and people hardly grasp anything that I speak. But again, I'll keep this video pretty long. Think about it. Try to think of where all you can apply this philosophy in your day-to-day life. Again, it's a gloomy theory. The only thing that's positive out of it is to apply it to, let's say, have as less number of conflicts as possible. So most of the time, unless and until you are physically harmed, or unless and until there is an existential threat. Again, existential threat is a very dicey term. No one actually knows what existential threat means for the other person, right? So I'll just simply keep it at unless and until you see a physical harm. Even if it means that you have to fall down sometime, it's okay to fall down. If it's better in the long term survival of, let's say, you as an individual, or your family as your first core responsibility, right? If that is the case, it's okay to be to lose, let's say, a battle at times, just to be winner in the war for some time. And I mean, you can maybe live a happy life. It's been a crazy video. I'll just stop it here. Hope I am able to make some sense. See you again in a different podcast. So I'll try to do some podcasts, because I mean, not having a lot of tech or gadgets that I can keep on reviewing. Whenever I get something, I'll definitely put up my reviews. But at the same time, I mean, whatever I keep on thinking, I'll try to make a visual encyclopedia for, again, my kids to see when I am no longer there, or me at least to revisit these thoughts that I had when I was recording the video, right? Again, me, I always consider myself to be someone who learns at each stage of life. I have my opinions, but I am more than happy to change my opinion at any point of time as my understanding grows, or as I see new things. So opinions are never permanent. In the way I behave with you, that can also change. I always want peace, nothing else. Because at the end, there is this brutal end that that's the ultimate reality in life. So until and unless that brutal end comes, I want to be as good and as happy to everyone around me as possible. Thanks, and spread the happiness.